On today's show, the Capitals want to improve at the center position. Is Brock Nelson the answer? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the man himself, Joe Beninati, the voice of the Capitals on the TV side. So many fond memories listening to Joe B on so many milestones for the Capitals. And there is some uncertainty for Joe B is, will he be on the call when Alex Ovechkin catches and passes Wayne Gretzky? If you take a look at Joby, he has been there pretty much every stage along the way for Alex Ovechkin. I think the Capitals need to find a way to make sure that Joby will be on the call when Alex Ovechkin reaches greatness. Is it possible? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about Sonny Milano. Is at practice here, and when is he going to be able to join the team? And when he does join the team, who is going to have to come out of the lineup? And then we'll talk about, should the Capitals be all in on Brock Nelson? And that is where we will start today. If you take a look at the Capitals, they're in a good position right now, sitting atop the Eastern Conference and playing pretty well, all things considered, really well, as a matter of fact. They stumbled a bit against the Calgary Flames, but when you talk about the Capitals and one area that needs improvement, oftentimes people will say the third line, or more specifically, the third line center position. And there is one name that has been circulated quite often when it comes to the Capitals, and that is Brock Nelson of the Islanders. And I don't necessarily like this deal, and I don't like a lot of the things about it. I think that there is a good upside in the goal scoring department, even though he has seen a bit of a dip in production, but it would be a rental. Most likely here. I guess there is the chance that they could sign him to, a contract with some sort of extension at some point, but on paper, it would be a rental. So what kind of player would the Capitals ultimately be getting in a guy like Brock Nelson? That is where we will start here today. As, like I say, the trade deadline is right around the corner, and all the insiders are whipping up a bunch of different names, throwing it at the wall, seeing what sticks. And what would it be? What would be in it for the Islanders, as the Islanders are not having the season that they had hoped for? And Brock Nelson, who will be a free agent this summer, I think the feeling is if they can move on from him now and get a return, maybe a prospect, maybe some young talent on the team, then they would entertain the thought, as I don't think Brock Nelson has a future on the island. So let's dig into that on Brock Nelson. We're going to talk about an intriguing trade possibility that could bolster our roster as we steer towards the 2025 NHL Trade Deadline. And like I say, there's been a buzz around the Capitals expressing interest in Brock Nelson. Now, that's a name that could really shake things up a little bit. So if you aren't familiar, let's take a look at his stats for this season, as that is what is important. Like I say, he has taken a bit of a dip in production, as he is at 17 goals through 57 games. But, you take a look at it on a regular basis, he puts up 30 goals. The 23-24 season, 34 goals. The 22-23 season, 36 goals. The 21-22 season, 37 goals. And where he plays primarily is the second line center. So if they could get a guy like Brock Nelson, a guy that has quite a track record, and I don't want to diminish the kind of player that Brock Nelson is, but it's not going to come cheap. And a little bit later in this segment, I'll talk about possible pieces that would move in order to accommodate that. Now, with Nelson being a versatile top six centerman, he's got experience on both special teams and can bring some serious depth to our lineup. You take a look at it, Lars Eller, all things considered, has been an okay upgrade to what we had to start the season. I wouldn't say that he has been stellar. So I think that if the Capitals did acquire Brock Nelson via trade, that would be where he would fit, as we have Pierre-Luc Dubois on the second line, Dylan Strome on the first line, and Nick Dowd on the fourth line. But like I say, there are some things to be concerned about. He has seen a dip in production, 17 goals, 20 assists for 37 points in 57 games, but don't forget his playoff pedigree as well. That is something that, like I say, isn't easily quantifiable. That is one of the knocks that Frank Seravalli made against the Capitals, as they are not battle tested. That there's recency bias, that how would this young team, all things considered, you take a look at Ovi, Wilson, Carlson, these kind of guys do have a playoff experience, but there is also a lot of unproven talent, and also not a lot of playoff experience or no playoff experience with this current group altogether. Now, with 82 games of playoff experience and 27 goals under his belt, he can definitely make a difference when it matters most. So that's some of the things to take a look at, is playoff experience. But if you want the backstory, where does he come from? He was selected in the first round, number 30 overall in the 2010 draft. He played 2 seasons at the University of North Dakota, achieving success with 28 goals in his sophomore season. So really great right out of the gates. After turning pro, he joined the Bridgeport Islanders for the 2012-2013 season, scoring 25 goals. Nelson made his NHL debut during the 2013 Stanley Cup playoffs and secured a spot on the Islanders in the 13-14 season, finishing his rookie season with 14 goals. Now, he is an upgrade. There's no doubt about that. He consistently scored at least 20 goals for 3 seasons, peaking with 25 goals in the 18-19 season, helping the team reach the second round of the playoffs. In May of 2019, he signed a 6-year contract extension. Nelson had a standout season with 37 and 36 goals in consecutive years. On January 23rd, 2024, he reached the 500 career points in NHL and was selected to represent the U.S. In the Four Nations face-off. So, again, he would be an incredible upgrade. But the thing, again, I don't like about it is he going to join the team just for a few months? Now, here's the catch. Nelson's current cap hit is $6 million, and the Capitals are sitting with about $3.65 million in available cap space. So how would the Capitals make that work? The Islanders might be willing to retain a portion of his salary, but that means we've got to sweeten the deal. And that's where it gets a bit difficult, doesn't it, Capitals fans? You take a look at potential trade pieces. So who are some of the pending free agents this summer? You take a look at it: Andrew Mangiapane, Jacob Chikrin, Lars Eller, Ethan Bear, Nick Dowd, Hendrik Slapierre, Charlie Lindgren, Taylor Radish, Pierre Dubé, Henrik Rabinski, Garen Bjorklund, Alex Alexiev, Mitchell Gibson. There is a long laundry list here: Hunter Shepard and Dylan McElrath. So what players would the Islanders be interested in? And oftentimes I ask those, questions to people. What do you think a Brock Nelson deal would look like? And they're like, well, we'll trade Sonny Milano and Jacob Vrana for Brock Nelson. That's not going to cut it. You take a look at the pieces that they might be interested in, being that they're kind of on the outside. They are on the outside as far as their playoff hopes. So I don't think a player like Andrew Mangiapane is going to interest them too much. If they were in a push for the playoffs, potentially. I think that they probably have a player like Hendrix LaPierre circled. And that's an intriguing one for me, as you know that he has been a bit hot and cold. He has played well in his time in Hershey, and the Capitals have tried multiple times on the big team. It hasn't worked out, or there has been little to no sustainability. So that is one player in particular. I think that they may be circling as a player of interest there. So you take a look at it. Sonny Milano, again, that's not going to get it done in and of itself. But if they had to have a package deal, I think that would give them their best chance. Now he's got an expiring contract, Sonny Milano, worth 1.9 mil, which could help clear some cap space and balance the deal. But we know he's a bit of a wild card with his injury status. And the crazy names that have been floated out there is Alexei Protas. Am I going to trade Alexei Protas for Brock Nelson, who's going to be here for a couple months? Quick answer, no. Do you need to think about it? Not for a second. You take a look at it, Brock Nelson could help the Capitals be a better team. But if you take a look at the Rantanen deal, sometimes these deals don't go the way that you had hoped for. How many goals has he put up for the Canes in his time there? 1 goal. How many goals did he put up for the Avalanche before? 25. And he hasn't played there that long. I get all that. But you take a look at it, sometimes these things don't work out the way you hoped. Brock Nelson on the Capitals this season seems like an upgrade, but then there's the outside things that aren't easy to measure, like team chemistry. How's Brock Nelson going to fit into the Capitals locker room? A locker room that everyone around the NHL says is one of, if not the best locker room in the NHL. Those are the things that you have to think about. So Alexei Protas for Brock Nelson, not for a second. Another young player that could be interesting for them is Henrik Rubinski, who has performed decently in the AHL with 23 points this season. Now, if you want to widen the lens, and if the Islanders wanted to get creative, well, one of the things that is that we have a glut of talent in the net minding department. Would a package deal like Hunter Shepard work? I don't necessarily think that the Islanders are looking for net minding per se, but if they could take a Hunter Shepard, or brace yourself, a Charlie Lindgren type player, then I think that is an intriguing storyline. Now, the Islanders, like I say, don't necessarily need net minding, but they could get a player like a Hunter Shepard, or I hate to say it out loud, a Charlie Lindgren, and they could flip that for some younger talent, a team that does need a Charlie Lindgren. Now, I'm going to say it right now that Charlie Lindgren would be pushed way to the back burner. Despite what I've said about Charlie Lindgren, I think trying to mess up what's been working in net for the Capitals isn't a good idea. However, Charlie Lindgren is going to be a free agent this summer. So either they come to terms and get a deal done with him before this summer, or he walks and the Capitals get zero. So I kind of think to a certain extent that the Capitals are pretty close to a deal with Charlie Lindgren. I don't want to make this about Charlie Lindgren, but when you think of a player like Brock Nelson, you're not going to get a Brock Nelson for a Jacob Vrana and a Milano straight up. It's just not going to be the case. So it would have to be a big name or a bundle type situation. So that's what we're looking at here for a Brock Nelson type player. Again, to wrap it up here, do I think he would be an upgrade for the Capitals? I do. On paper, again, I point to the Rantanen deal. You take a look at what they had to give up to get a Rantanen, and it might not even get them across the finish line or reach their above objective. And he might walk into the sunset in the offseason. So those are all the things to consider. That sometimes, you take a look at that Rantanen deal, for example, that sent shockwaves through the NHL. Like when that hit the wire, that created quite an uproar. Hasn't really paid off for the Hurricanes as of yet. So I think it is important to look at these things cautiously. Don't spend too much time taking a look at analytics, because sometimes analytics will lead you astray. Again, you look at the Rantanen deal. That's the big move so far here recently. hasn't paid off for the Hurricanes as of yet. It might, but just keep all of those things in the back of your mind, that Brock Nelson has a pedigree, has a great history, has playoff experience. But there's certain things. What if he doesn't fit into the Capitals locker room? And what would the Capitals have to give up? As Capitals fans, how much would you be willing to give up to get a Brock Nelson? Do yourself a favor. I went over his stats. Again, quite stunning, but do the Capitals want to give up that much to get a player like Brock Nelson? Hit me up on Twitter or on YouTube. I want to hear your thoughts. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Sonny Milano back at practice. What can we expect from him, and who comes out of the lineup so he can go in? I'll discuss straight ahead. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade, and let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took their quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tasted even better. My first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth, rich flavor, and I could actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for what is ever on the shelf. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, talking Sonny Milano here, it does seem that he is inching somewhat closer to return, I guess. This injury that he's faced at the end of the day, I still think it's a bit of roster management. There's no real video moment of, aha, that is where Sonny Milano got injured, but yet he has missed so much time. If you're asking me, like I said, roster management, cap compliance, these kind of things, I think that is what is afoot here. But let's dive into the very latest with Sonny Milano and what can we expect from him and who comes out of the lineup. And before I get going, and I'll talk about that a bit later in this segment, is who comes out. And is a player like Ethan Frank, is Ethan Frank coming out for Sonny Milano to go in? Is that a good idea? I'll have that covered later in this segment, but let's dig into that. Sonny Milano is one of those players that when he first came to the team, the initial projections for him were to be an AHL player. And when he first came here, really popped off the page. And if I look back at some of my older notes, I said he had a good nose for the puck, put himself in the right place at the right time. But then you take a look at Spencer Carberry and his thoughts on how he played in camp in the fall. Well, it was a bit lackluster, and he didn't think that what he saw out on the ice was stellar, shall we say. So today we've got some updates on Sonny Milano. He finally participated in his first full practice with the team, donning a regular practice jersey for the first time since his rehabilitation from that pesky upper body injury that's still a bit ambiguous. It's been a while, as he hasn't played since November 6th. Take a look at the calendars. It's darn near March here, and we still don't really know the nature of this injury when he faced off against the Preds, and he was placed on the long-term injured reserve shortly thereafter. Head coach Spencer Carberry, he had some insight. He said, shared with Milano, has made significant strides in his recovery. Again, before I go any further, hit pause. He's going to be a depth player at this point. He is going to be the guy that they put in the cupboard, close the door, and if you know what hits the fans, open it up and put him in the lineup. I'm not taking Ethan Frank to put him in there. And I don't know of another player in the lineup that could come out to accommodate something like that. So it is an interesting position for the Capitals to be in. At the end of the day, I think they would entertain the idea of trading him. If there is not a trade partner, I also think there is the possibility he gets waived, if not just being held on to for depth. Though he highlighted that he still is a ways out and no clear timeline for when we can expect him back on the ice. He mentioned, quote, yeah, step forward for Sonny, so he'll start to resume practice in a non-contact, unquote. Now, this is a crucial step for Milano as he gets closer to return. We're definitely seeing some positive developments. Now, that was the comments before, as they said from practice that he was donning a regular jersey. So what to expect from him? Milano's gradual comeback since early January. Milano has been gradually ramping up from practice participation, starting out by working individually with skills coach Kenny McCudden. Now, so far this season, he's only managed to play in 3 games, but last season he put up 23 points with 15 goals and 8 assists in 49 games. So, you take a look at it. There are a couple players on this team, and I know that, I'm talking about Vrana, I'm talking about Milano. Vrana in particular, I think is full go. Just, where's he going to go in? That there are some players on that are just kind of fillers and not real good fillers. I'm going to say that if, it hit the fan, is Jacob Vrana or Sonny Milano, when healthy, going to be a good option? I think they have better options in Ethan Frank and more, specifically a player from down in Hershey like Ivan Miroshnichenko. Now, with over 10 games missed in 24 days gone by, Milano is eligible to return from the long-term injured reserve as soon as he gets the medical green light. Now, he's really got some competition for that spot in the lineup. Like I said, Ethan Frank has been doing his part, contributing 5 points in 17 games since his call-up from the Bears. I don't want Ethan Frank to come out. And if that happened, I would be so utterly confused, befuddled, if I saw that go across the wire that, Ethan Frank has been assigned to Hershey to accommodate Sonny Milano. I'd be like, what in the is going on here? So I don't think that's going to be the case, but I don't really see another scenario where he could come in. Now, the Capitals are sitting at a full 23-man roster, which means they'll need to make a move to fit Milano back in. Again, trade, even though that's going to get little to nothing. I think, at the end of the day, he's fit for the AHL right now. He's been injured. His numbers haven't been great. I don't know who's going to take a flyer on him. Now, you take a look at it with players like Vrana, McElrath, and Alexiev often finding themselves as healthy scratches. There could be some interesting decisions to make. Again, Alexiev is the guy. We've been sold the bill of goods forever. Is going to be good. And I know he's had little to no opportunities. And when we have seen him, he hasn't been bad, but who's coming out to put him in? Injuries, and Dylan McElrath love his game. I think the Capitals need to do whatever they need to do to sign him to a longer-term deal, whether it be in the AHL, kind of in the cryogenic deep freeze, or on the big team. But contract considerations, as we look ahead, let's not forget that Milano has 1 year left on his contract, which carries a cap hit of $1.9 million, thanks to that 3-year extension he signed back in 2023. Again, these contracts don't always age well. I think the Milano deal is aging a bit like a carton of milk. And, to be fair here, he hasn't had a ton of opportunity. Spencer Carberry says he wants to integrate these players in there. But at this point of the season, are you going to yank an Ethan Frank, or I don't know who else, to be honest with you, Lars Eller, perhaps, to accommodate that? So I don't like that idea. I think at the end of the day, he's going to be viewed as expendable or a depth piece. But the depth pieces that are on the team, I want to be legit options. So right now, if you're asking me, I'm putting my GM hat on. I'm waving him. I'm trading him if I can. If I can't, I am unconditionally releasing him. That's what I'm doing. If he's not brought, picked up by another team. That is my take on Sonny Milano. Bit of a hard take, but that is where I'm at with Sonny Milano. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the man himself, Joe B. Everybody loves Joe Beninati. You'd be hard-pressed to find a single person that has a negative thing to say about Joe B., but he's an interesting position. He's been there through the thick and thin for Alex Ovechkin, but there is a distinct possibility that he might not be on the call when Ovi breaks and passes Wayne Gretzky. An injustice, I say. I'll break it all down straight ahead. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets in a same-game parlay. And there's a lot of excitement if you're a Wizards fan or you're caught up in what's going on around the league. You know, there was that whole thing with the Mavericks and the Lakers, the All-Star game, or if you just want to have some money on a game that you might not normally be into, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So in this segment, we're talking Joe B, as he was on the Elliott in the morning radio show in D.C., and he talked about the possibility that he might not be on the call when Ovechkin reaches greatness. And what is greatness? Catching Gretzky. What is even greater? Surpassing Gretzky. And it's tough, as you know, Joe B is that voice. If you think Capitals and you hear someone describing the play-by-play, it's Joe B. He has been there for so many years. Really great guy, was nice enough to join me on this show once upon a time. And, you know, you take a look at it. I think it's a bit injustice, but I think part of the perils of, you know, Monumental buying NBC Sports Washington is that they're kind of independent, you know, and they don't have any rights, you know. It's, and I'll dig into this a little bit deeper, that there is a distinct possibility that, you know, whoever has the rights in this game, and I'll break that down more definitively, they might not just let Joe B hang out or Monumental join in the broadcast. So it is a difficult position for Joe B to be. And Locker, you know, we're hoping that he is going to be joining the broadcast crew yet here again. Now, today we're diving into an exciting topic, you know, talking about Ovi as he approaches monumental milestones of catching and passing Gretzky. That's right. Ovi is just 11 goals away from tying Wayne Gretzky. And, you know, like I say, Joe B has been there all the way. And unless it is a national broadcast, if it's been on Versus, or not Versus, if it was been on NBC Sports Washington, if it's been on Monumental and whatever else, you know, it's been a lot of different things over the years. Joe B has been there. So it seems only fitting to me that he would be there. But in a recent chat on the Elliott in the Morning podcast, or radio show rather, Beninati shared his heartfelt desire to be the voice calling those historic moments. He mentioned that not being present for those significant moments would, quote, hurt him, unquote, deeply. It's incredible to think that Joe has called over 90% of Ovi's career goals. His passion for the game and Ovi's journey is palpable. And I feel it when I was listening to the radio show this morning. I could feel it in his voice. And if there was anything that I could orchestrate, if I had one wish for Joe B, is that there could be some sort of waiver that he could join the broadcast crew, you know, once it gets really close. And I know that that is just, you know, one of those crazy dreams that you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you're a kid? I want to be an astronaut. Sure, Joey, you can be that. I understand it's one of those kind of things. But if I had a wish similar to that childhood wish, it would be that Joe B could sign some sort of form that let him join the broadcast crew for that. And I think that, you know, yeah, that would be great for any network that's covering it. ESPN, who better than to have on your crew than a guy that's been there for 90% of Ovi's goals, right? So I think that that would only make sense. But Beninati highlighted just how crucial it is to be there for the excitement leading up to those milestones. He noted that a lot of Capitals' upcoming games are nationally broadcasted as Ovechkin continues his ascent. And later I'll talk about that everyone wants in on this Ovi action. It's good for the sport. It's good for the Capitals. They're smelling dollar signs at the end of the day. In fact, he pointed out that 4 of the last 6 games this season are set to be national exclusive, which speaks to the anticipation surrounding Ovi's chase for greatness. Now, the broadcast rights and network coverage, interestingly, the schedule has shifted as major networks like ESPN and ABC are eager to cover Ovechkin's goals. It's interesting. For so many years, ESPN, you could watch ESPN and you would be hard pressed to find anything about hockey, period, until they signed that ESPN Plus deal. Before then, if you turned on ESPN, it was all basketball and maybe football. But now all of a sudden, they're all in. How have times have changed? Now, however, Joe emphasized that although Monumental Sports Network will want to be a part of the action, they may face constraints in terms of broadcast rights. He compared the potential heartbreak of not calling these historic goals to the emotional roller coaster he experienced when he couldn't call the Capitals' 2018 Stanley Cup victory. You got to know that somewhere at home in a hotel room, he was still calling that. I don't believe anything else. I think that he wanted to vocalize it. I think he wanted to speak his own truth. In my mind, I got to think that Joe B is at home going, and, if the shot goes to Ovechkin and he scores, you got to know that was going on somewhere at Joe B's house. In my mind, that what was going on. But milestone goals on the horizon with Ovechkin maintaining a pace of 0.71 goals per game. There's the real possibility he could hit 894 on April 1st in Boston, which will be broadcast on Monumental. So after that, keep an eye out for 2 Monumental broadcasts before the end of the season, as 4 of the last 5 games will be national exclusive to national network. So quite a thing for the Capitals, for Joe B. Again, this was all covered by Elliot in the morning, and also on the Russian Machine Never Breaks, RMNP. This was a great story. So thanks to those guys for putting together the story. My take on the whole thing is that it is it's an interesting time for Joby. He has been there with the thick. He's been there through the thin, covering this team. And I think if there's any justice in the world, it is that he can be on the call. And at the end of the day, there's no control over it. I can't control it. Joe B can't control it. You got to think that Ted Leonsis, with all of his money, can find a way to get it done. I mean, he bought Cap Friendly, for God's sake. He can move mountains. So Ted Leonsis, if you are out there anywhere listening to this podcast, put your best people on this and find a way to get it done so that Joe B can get this done. And I really want that to be the case. So if I had any say to it, Joe B would be on the call. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. And when you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, where they have you covered all around the NHL 5 days a week. Available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. So once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.